Welcome to Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs, where we reveal what it really takes to build a successful business. Whether you are starting with an idea or growing your business, this is the show for you. My guests and I will show you how to build a strong mindset, a powerful body, a profitable business. Hi, I'm Brandon C. White, and this is Build a Business Success Secrets. I'm really excited because, I don't know how, I think you popped up in my feed, I want to say maybe a year ago, and I'd been looking for someone to have on the podcast that actually, there's plenty of, I don't know, I'll probably get in trouble with a lot of my friends, meatheads out there, but from a guy who's lifted weights since he was a kid and used to weigh 40 pounds heavier. But there's nobody who truly understands it, at least in my belief that I've seen. There are people, because I've been trained that way, but people out there who really advocate for I call it mobility versus stretching and bulking up, so to speak. So I'm really excited and I'm grateful. I know it took us a minute. You're really busy and looked like you had a terrific vacation. And I know you're recording like crazy.
I am. I'm excited to be here and talk about some of those things that you want to touch on, because I think there are so many misconceptions and people think that they need to do certain things, but they don't actually know why. And they don't actually have like the physiological understanding of like how our body works and functions. So I'm super excited to talk about it today. Be here.
Well, cool. So before we start, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about your business, because you have an interesting story. I think just at least for a few minutes, if you could share it with the audience, how you really transition it. You and I have never talked before other than Instagram messages and email, but it sounds like you were a traditional, from all my research and reading your website, a traditional physical therapist who really saw some problems with that. And then you've transitioned into this really cool online business that you've clearly gone all in, because I saw an app the other day and stuff like that. So could you share a little bit of that story?
Yes. So I guess I'll go back to my schooling and kind of how I got into it. So I was a business major in undergrad, and I worked at a software company for an internship. And I was like, I can't do this. I cannot sit behind a computer all day long. While I was in an undergrad, I was teaching fitness classes. So I loved doing that on the side, but I just kind of saw it as a hobby. I didn't see it as something that would be my career. And ultimately I decided this is my life. Like, I want to do what I'm actually interested in. So I went to physical therapy school. The whole time I was in PT school, I knew I wasn't going to be a traditional physical therapist. I just knew I was going to somehow, I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always started like side hustles and side businesses. So went to physical therapy school. After physical therapy school, I worked at a cash pay physical therapy clinic. And actually, I kind of just worked as a personal trainer. And at that clinic, I was dealing with my own chronic pain, my own overuse injuries. I was doing tons of what I would call show off yoga, where like you stretch yourself to the very breaking point and do all these cool tricks. And my body could do all of that, but my body felt horrible. And I was treating patients who felt the same. They were very fitness minded. Getting them to the gym was no problem, but their bodies felt like crap. And I just thought, there has to be a better way where we can be fit and work out and our joints don't have to feel like they're falling apart. We shouldn't have to get all of this body maintenance because of our workouts. Our workouts should build us up, not break us down. And so when I moved to North Carolina, my husband goes to Duke for his MBA. So we moved from Kansas City to North Carolina, and I opened my own physical therapy private practice here and was dealing with the same thing here. All these CrossFit people, all of people doing like more functional movement and runners and whatever, everybody had all of these issues from their workouts. And I just thought, this is so backwards. So my practice was going really well. I felt like I was waitlisted, and then the pandemic hit. And I thought, this is the perfect opportunity for me to go online and actually, instead of just treating the symptom, which to me, the symptom was people's pain from their workouts, let's get straight to the cause, which is their workouts. And if we create a workout program that doesn't cause all those side effects, then these people won't have to be in their physical therapist's office every week, just trying to put themselves back together. So I started what was Levo, rebranded to Evlo, and we can talk about I love talking about business. So we can talk about business as much as you want in this interview, but yeah, we just launched an app. I just launched a podcast. It's called Fit Body, Happy Joints. I launched that 2 weeks ago. So life is good. Life is good right now. That's kind of my story.
So how did you, I mean, that's incredible. And I'm not going to hold it against you or your husband, only because I am a UNC Chapel Hill Tar Heel who has his MBA from there. And we got our coach from Kansas who,
Yep.
So I'm gonna let him off the hook. I'm only halfway joking, but
we could be on common ground there.
I saw a picture of him, I guess, watching like 3 basketball games. And truthfully, I think the big joke, and you moved there to the Raleigh-Durham area. The truth is that other than basketball, like everybody gets along. I mean, my professors at UNC were from Duke and vice versa. They teach in different places in those places. But when it comes to basketball, man,
there's a big rivalry. I think I totally agree. It's like there's this mutual respect because everyone sees each other as academics. But then when it comes to sports, it's like all the wheels come off. It's very funny. But if it makes you feel any better, we hate Duke as well. Like my husband will never wear a Duke polo or we hate Duke too. It's just because he's just here for school.
Well, we won't let the administrators hear that. But the people with Duke aren't bad. Actually, my grandfather and uncle went there. So not all bad, awesome. But I'm joking. But how did you, that's an aside. How did you did you shut down your physical location and now doing it all online?
Yes. So I was renting space and just operating as my kind of in my own practice. And when the pandemic hit, the space completely shut down. So I was out of a job. It was sort of a panic moment, as for a lot of people all around the world. And because my husband was in school, so he didn't have an income. So it was kind of like scrambling to try to figure out how to make this work. And, like, as you know, starting a business, sometimes it takes months before you're making a profit. And, not that it's all about money, but when you're the sole breadwinner, it kind of is. So that was the first few months. I had a blast doing it, but they were very difficult. And we're finally at a point where we're making a profit. We're seeing the things coming together, and it's a lot more fun now, but the first few months were very, very stressful.
Yeah. So a few things, just so our listeners, the model that you were using is that you were in an existing physical therapy place and you effectively rent a room, so to speak, very much like a barber or a hairdresser rents a chair. Was that the business model?
Exactly. And I was treating people's injuries. I wasn't doing fitness with them. So they would come to me for back pain and I would treat their injuries from like a rehab standpoint. Whereas now my model is all online and it's fitness classes. So it's workouts. It's not treating pain or treating injuries or anything like that. So it's a completely different model.
And you were doing a revenue share, just like a hairdresser or a barber, in the sense that you, I guess you had a set fee per month to rent the room, and then you did a revenue share with that practice?
No, luckily it was just rent, which is really nice. And the person that I rented from was super generous and it was very affordable. So yeah, no revenue share, just rent, which was really nice.
So I want to get to the fitness, but you've done something, you mentioned that you're profitable, and a few things you mentioned that I want to comment. One is, being in business is about money. I think this is something that I'm only taking the opportunity because I think we as humans, creators, entrepreneurs, business owners, sometimes feel like there's this perception about money that's bad. There's nothing bad about money. There's nothing bad about making a lot of money. That is a cultural shift that someone is trying, or a small group of people are trying to shift, but there is nothing wrong with wealth. And we should feel good about making money. So I'll say that start.
I could not agree with you more. And, as someone who is, I think you can also be, it can be a both and. Like you can be altruistic and want to change the world, and you can also want to make a lot of money doing it. And that's a shift that I've had to make in my own mind over the last year, starting this business, where I'm like, I've been so used to trading time for money as a physical therapist, and getting into a model where it's scalable and I'm not trading time for money anymore has been, you almost feel this layer of guilt, like, oh my gosh, I'm not working hard enough to like get this amount of money. But it's like, but I know, like I can actually change so many more people's lives, and I can also make a lot of money doing it. So I totally thank you for saying that. For especially all the PTs that are listening, I think we have this thing where like we have to trade time for money, and we can't make over, 100 grand, or else like, it's ridiculous. I totally agree. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I take the opportunity to say it often, because there's this thing like, oh, well, there's nothing bad about money. And by the way, I will tell you from a guy who created there's this, I don't even like the word passive income, because that degrades what we've created. It's that we've created a long tail on our product that allows us to collect, and it becomes highly addictive. Like there was nothing more than I like to get these emails. I get them today for our newsletter. Like, hey, you just made $299. And when I created my first business, I had the same thing. My wife has a dog agility side hustle training facility, and she's getting these emails. And this is, she used to not really be as, I'm going to say aggressive. I was joking with her last night, but you start to get emails and you're like, hey, I just made $25. Hey, I just made $25. Like that's really makes you feel good.
Yes. And it's not like you're not putting value into the world to earn that money. You're still putting value out. I think it's just a shift that you don't have to be slaving away every second to be making money. There is no better feeling, I totally agree, than waking up and checking your email and seeing that you made money in your sleep. There is no better feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's great, right?
It doesn't mean you don't deserve it, or you don't it doesn't mean that you don't deserve it. I think that's the biggest thing. Like people have to get past.
Yeah, you'll get past it. You deserve it.
Working on it.
you deserve it. And in fact, you should get more of it and make a ton of it, because that means that you're solving a real problem for people that they're willing to pay for. And there's just nothing wrong with that. So I wanted
totally agree.
I wanted to comment on that. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, you're already profitable, and you said something like, oh, sometimes it takes months to get profitable. I just want to, from a guy who I'm wearing a sweatshirt, so you can't see it, or whatever the shirt is, as long as you pull over, is I got a lot of scars on my back that says sometimes it can take years. So with that, how have you, because I looked at your Instagram, you started Instagram in August, I think it's August 26th of 2019, which maybe is a time when you started to do Instagram, but then this pandemic, you create this shift. How have you been able to create this following? It looks to me mostly through Instagram, maybe word of mouth, and maybe an email list that you have. Can you just take a few minutes? Like, how have you done that, Shannon? Because that's incredible.
Well, thank you. It's funny because the first, I would say, year, was a slow grind. Like I felt like I was posting a lot. I wasn't getting very much traction. I think between August of when I started my Instagram and the following August of 2020, I think I had maybe 8,000 followers at this last August. And then from this last August to now, which is what, about, what is that? 8 months, 9 months. I have almost, I think I checked today, as 27,000 followers. So most of my growth has happened within the last six or so months, 6 or 8 months. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I am sure. I think the first thing that I did was I cleaned up my messaging, and I understood my customer, and I understood how to speak to them in a way that wasn't so complicated. So I think that was the main thing that I did, is I started to understand them. I talked to them all the time. I was in my DMs, I was in my emails, I was interacting with my customers literally on a daily basis and figuring out, getting inside their brains. And I changed my messaging from exercise that prevents injuries to the more results driven like messaging, which is fit bodies, happy joints. As soon as I did that and people understood more of my messaging and understood the result they were going to get from my product, the following like exploded. I also took advantage of reels. So like reels were really popular a few months ago, and the algorithm was really favoring them. So I was posting reels like every day, or not every day, but only like 3 times a week, but still. And then also doing Instagram ads. So I have an ad that I've been doing for the last 8 months because it works really well. It converts really well. And with Instagram, do you run Instagram ads?
No, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as you know, for the listener, in case listeners don't know, you can really funnel in the type of person that you're trying to attract in your ad. So I can dial in exactly who I'm trying to attract. And even if they don't click on my ad and go through my funnel, they maybe might click on my profile and follow me that way. So I think those 3 things that I've done is dialing in my messaging, taking advantage of what's popular on Instagram. So like the reels, and then also doing Instagram ads is really how I've been able to grow in the last 8 months.
And is that a lead magnet that you're moving them towards on the ad?
Yes. So I do, for me, I've found that video ads convert better. And so it's literally just like a selfie of me talking. And I say something similar, like a similar message, like your workouts don't have to break you down. My philosophy is that you can, it's, a 7-second video, and it's free. It's 6 free classes. So they swipe up, their email is right there. They put in their email. There's not a lot of copy. There's not a lot of words. They put in their email, and then boom, they get the 6 free classes in their email. From there, they are subscribed to an email sequence of like 4 emails over 10 days with education. There's another bonus workout in there. And then the final email on the 10th day is the invitation to join the membership. So that's kind of my funnel that's been working pretty well. Interestingly, I think that like, although that funnel works, I think what works the most is getting people warm on Instagram and talking to the camera on Instagram and showing my face and being maybe a little bit more vulnerable and making people learn that I'm a real person and sharing some of my life, and them getting to know me and promoting my product that way. And then when they're warm and they trust me and they understand my philosophy, then they're more likely to join my membership. So
I really appreciate you explaining that and sharing that, because you've done a great job. One question, I got a whole bunch of questions, and maybe this is a transition. Well, congratulations, first of all, because I've watched you do it just from observing. I haven't gotten your ads. I won't click on it because it'll cost you $1, $2, or $3, or whatever your customer acquisition cost is. But and by the way, is your acquisition cost within $5, or is it 5 to 10, or
since we just switched platforms, I don't have the like conversion. I have the cost per click, which is like 77 cents. I think I just checked it yesterday.
That's really good.
But that's the click. So that's like them just swiping up on it. So the cost, like from that to them joining my membership, I'm not sure what the cost is because since we just changed platforms, I don't have enough data yet. But
are you using Kajabi now?
I was using Kajabi, and I just switched to like a white labeled platform where it's just all like branded. So it's not on like one of those platforms.
Got you. Yeah. So this is maybe our transition. Thanks for sharing all that and really good work. So I'm interested because I keep track of what t-shirt or sweatshirt I wear on all the podcasts, because we've been doing 3 and we're moving to 5. And I just think if we're going to put these on YouTube, which we are, then you do that. So I noticed that you have a different outfit on possibly 3 times a day. And I'm wondering how you do that and where are you getting these clothes? Like, are you sponsored? Do you coordinate this? Like it's clear to me that it's not random. I mean,
oh, that's so funny. You've been the first person to call me out on that. That is so funny. Yeah, I mean, so here's what happens. I teach in the morning and I wear an outfit. I'm less conscious about what I'm wearing while I'm teaching. I'm more interested in the like how I'm teaching and what I'm teaching. But when I am filming like my content, either on stories or for like content on my Instagram, I am conscious of what I'm wearing because I think that I want to look put together and clean and professional, and I want to look the part. And I know how important that is. So yeah, I will sometimes change like 3 times a day, depending on what I'm doing. And I batch my content. So like I'll plan all my stuff and then I'll film all my stuff all at once. And so a lot of times I will change in between in the same day. Like I'll change 3 or 4 times just to like film new content. So that's so funny.
Well, that was
that.
my zinger question for today. Because I was like, how is Shannon doing this? Like she has new top on. I mean, what is going on? And one other business thing, you are, just for listeners, because people ask me, and you made a comment when we jumped on, you're like, oh, wow, well, you got a whole setup there. I'm like a total geek and want that, but it looks like you're recording your stuff, which you can on an iPhone 12 at 4K, which is basically movie quality. You're doing a lot of this with not a red camera. Is that right?
I have no camera. All I use for all my classes, all my content is my phone.
Okay. So there you go, people. Like when Shannon, you can imagine, and you're a business person and entrepreneur yourself, and I'm sure PT people come to you like, Shannon, how do you do it? I got to go research this new Sony camera or this red. You do. If you're listening out there, you do not need all this stuff. In fact, I'll be honest, I'm building a studio out back right now, recording studio, and I'm going to do all my videos with this 12 at 4K with a Rode mic because it works.
Why spend a bunch of money on a camera if your users are not going to be able to tell the difference? Yeah, I totally agree. The phone.
I think you're a testament. I just want to say this, that you are already making money. You're profitable on a subscription business, and you're doing it with a phone, a laptop, and earbuds.
And I'm doing it literally in my living room. Like people are like, think they need a fancy studio, and I am doing it. I'll just show you my backdrop here. It's kind of messy because I just filmed. You guys get to see behind the scenes. This is what my classes look like. Literally in front of my TV that's not mounted. There's a wine little carrier there, and yeah, like a crappy bookshelf. Like you do not need to get fancy.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I saw an Instagram story from you that you showed your boxes. I guess you were feeling some guilt that everybody thought you were perfect, but I think that was good. That was good. I already knew it because if I like showed you around in here, there's like a dog blanket on the floor there, because I saw it when we were getting ready. I was like, I can't put that in there, but you can make things, frame things look really good, right? And
yes,
you've done a great job. So let's talk about fitness. One of the things or fitness or mobility, or what is the right nomenclature that you're using now for this whole like lifting fitness? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I really prioritize biomechanics over anything because I do think that the forces you are putting through your body are important, and I don't think that is studied or appreciated or known about in the industry. I think people think that there's a certain like number of popular exercises that everyone should do, and a lot of those popular exercises don't place force through your body in an appropriate way that will lead to the strongest, most fittest body with the least amount of joint degeneration. So yeah, I would call it probably biomechanics, but with that when you have happier joints and a stronger body, you will have better mobility. And we can get into that. We can get into like why that happens, why you have tightness and all of that stuff, but just to kind of start there.
Yeah. So let's talk about it, because I sent you a video and I do all these like mobility exercises, and you can hear, which I've been taught, and I could be wrong, they're bone spurs or something that effectively they build up and you can hear them, and you got to keep doing these mobility, but it's very different than stretching. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So I think we can back up, because I think when I explain this, it can help people understand exactly what stretching is doing and what it's not doing. So tightness is, and you probably already know this, but just for like the listener, tightness is a mechanism from your nervous system to keep you safe. So when your nervous system senses instability or a bone spur or a ligament tear or something is wrong inside your joint, it tightens up the tissues around that joint in order to protect you from going into a range of motion that could injure that structure. So when we think about tightness in that way, when we stretch a muscle that is trying to tighten up and protect you, we are potentially overriding our nervous system's natural protective mechanism and potentially opening you up to vulnerabilities that your nervous system's trying to protect you from. So I have a lot of issues with stretching, and this is an unpopular opinion, and I don't stretch, and I don't recommend my clients stretching because of that, because we don't have x-ray vision and we don't know or understand exactly why our muscles or our tissues are tight in a certain range of motion. So do we want to bypass that protective mechanism and assume that we know better than our nervous system and stretch into ranges of motion where we're then opening ourselves up to vulnerability? So I like to think of stretching as more of, you have to utilize an external force, like pulling your leg with a strap or gravity or using your body weight to bring your joint into a position that it can't go if you were to let go of that external force. So for example, doing the splits and using your body weight to like push your legs into the splits is different than how much you could just actively lift your leg up towards your chest if you were in standing. So that's kind of the difference between flexibility, which is using an external force, and mobility, which is using your muscular system to actively bring your joint into a certain position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I think for listeners, It's really important because when I first learned about all of this, and we've been taught, I mean, this comes from high school sports, right? Like there's all this stretching stuff that goes on, and there's not a lot of discussion. Then you carry it through your adulthood and you don't realize that you could be injuring yourself. But when I carry a lot of weight, which probably comes from all the bodybuilding in those days, my back will get tight. And I met this guy and he's like, well, you need to do mobility exercises with your hips and your back, and you need to rotate it and it'll go away. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't think so. I think you got to stretch it. He's like, no. And he was trained in Russia, and he walked me through this thing. And sure enough, what your body really wants to know, which is what you've said, is that you can move so it can stop tightening that muscle. Is that right?
Exactly. When your nervous system feels safe, it will give you all of the mobility that your structure can tolerate. So let's say you do have bony spurs in your wrist. Do you want your wrist going into all of this full extension if you're getting these bones rubbing over your structures and causing more damage? Probably not. But if you move actively through your wrists, improve synovial fluid, improve the connection of your brain to those neurons in your hand, maybe your brain feels like it has more information over how to move your wrist, and maybe the tightness decreases a little bit and you have all of the mobility that your structure will allow for. So, yeah, I mean, I do agree with what he said about like doing mobility drills will help reduce tightness. But I think that the missing factor is that you cannot out mobility or out massage or out foam roll or out stretch inappropriate forces through your workouts. So if you are wearing down your body in your workouts and causing all this compression in your spine and causing a bunch of shearing force in your discs, no amount of mobility can undo that force. It's like hitting a hammer on a piece of wood, and the hammer is your workouts, and you create all these damages in the wood. but then sanding it out and expecting it to look perfect again, you know, and the sand is like the sand with the sandpaper would be like your mobility drills. It's like, yes, it might make it feel a little bit better, but it still isn't going to undo the damage from your workouts.
Well, I think that's the key part why I was really excited that you agreed to come on today, because I had all that. And I think, first of all, let's just talk about crawl, walk, run, because the listeners probably are still at stretch. And we got to get them to, you're not going to stretch, you're going to do mobility. But the missing part is exactly what you said, which when I watched, and I've watched your videos, I mean, I'll be honest, at first I was like, that's why I watched for a long time to sort of figure this out, because you were doing tricep exercises and you're doing a chest exercise with your back on the ground on that mat that you showed us, and not going all the way down on the fly. And if you're a bodybuilder, like that is the, what do you call it? Like the thing, right? Like that's how you feel like you're really getting that pump. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do this thing that this Dr. Shannon says on this Instagram thing. And sure enough, you know, you can literally feel that you're not jacking your shoulder in the wrong way. So it's got to be this combination.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, we could break down individual exercises like from a biomechanical standpoint, but I don't want to confuse the listeners. But I think that, you know, going through larger range of motion isn't always necessarily the best for an individual's body, because if they're going through the range of motion and they're extending their arm all the way back here, but then they're also internally rotating to try to compensate for that lack of really arm extension, or being able to, for those that aren't listening, like in a bench press, when you bring your arms all the way down below the level of the bench, if they don't have that active ability of their shoulder and their shoulder caves in, they all of a sudden are probably going to get some like clunking in the front side of the shoulder, potentially impingement syndrome, potentially causing more inflammation and less ability for your muscles to contract. So although that's not like a bad thing to feel the fullest stretch of your pecs, and you will get better benefit that way, it's not always the safest for the masses. I think that you have to have a deep understanding of your body and what to look for and what to feel for in order to kind of go to those end ranges of motion. So that's why I do tend to, I think that you can get great results by just staying a little bit smaller and just playing it on the safe side. Unless you're like a professional bodybuilder, you know, then you will want to like push to those extremes a little bit more, but yeah.
Well, and I also think people, for whatever reason, don't quite grasp the fact that if you're going to try to model a male bodybuilder, or even some of these women fitness things, I'll go out on an edge here, or a ledge, and say they're using drugs, and they're using, and they
Thank you.
I mean, this is a fact. Like,
yes,
it's a fact. I mean, they're using drugs, and if you really knew them, they'd admit it to you. And they're using drugs that compensate the joints with things like Winstrol, Deca. I mean, I keep going down the list here, that are lubing the joints to get them through that. But as soon as they're done, you know, it's a major problem. So I think there's that perception. And look, I was a kid who wanted to be big, and, you know, you get it in your head. You're like, oh, I'm going to take all the, you know, I don't know how you feel about this, Shannon. But I tell people they shouldn't take, I mean, other than vitamins, I do take some vitamins that I think work. I don't know if they work. I saw the Netflix thing, like maybe they don't work, but the placebo works. Okay. For me, but as it relates to all this other supplement crap, just eat some real food. How do you feel about that?
I mean, off the record, because, you know, I do try to stay in my lane, because the nutrition, I will say, is not my formal like education. So I try not to like give anybody advice on that, but my opinion and how I treat it in my own body is I've learned to eat the food instead of blend it and drink it and all of that stuff. I totally agree. Like, I've heard that from a functional medicine doctor who advised, I was doing protein smoothies like every single day. And she said, eat your protein, just eat it. Like, eat the good, clean protein, whatever that is, instead of blending it. So yeah, I from a personal standpoint, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, the results speak for themselves. All you gotta do is look at people who eat healthy like yourself.
Yes.
Like you can see it works. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the greatest specimen, but for a guy who's middle age, right? Well, I don't know what middle age, 40,
Yeah,
50,
you look freaking great.
right? Like it clearly does something. That's all I
Yes.
know. And I used to take all those shakes. Trust me. I've taken
Yes.
every shake known to man. I don't want to go off on the nutrition thing, but I appreciate you sharing that. For our listeners, what would be the best example you could give that we could describe in a podcast? People on YouTube will obviously be able to see you do it, but what would be an example of an exercise that a lot of people do that you could describe on how it would be done better by following your method of not loading this joint? And basically, I think the other thing is when we say ruining your joints, what we're talking about is putting undue load on those joints that cause arthritis, pain, bone spurs, I don't know, 6 other things that you know. But I'd love for you to give that example of like that primary exercise.
Exactly. I definitely will. And I think if I could reframe your question just a little bit, because I think maybe it'll help me give a really good example of maybe not an exercise, but a muscle. Like if we could, okay, so perfect.
That works. That's better. Yeah, that's,
Okay.
I'm not, that's why I like to talk to people, Shannon, who are way smarter than I am, which you are. So there you go.
No. That is a very, very common question is like, how do I change this one exercise to fit my body better? And I like to say, how do we choose an exercise to fit your body instead of fitting your body to an exercise?
I love that.
It's totally backwards, but I do think that it's like a subtle but important shift. Okay. So let's take the glutes because everyone loves to know how to load the glutes effectively.
Well, let's talk about where the glutes are because some people actually might not know that. So where are the glutes?
Thank you. I know I get carried away and then I like start talking in all these technical terms. Okay. So your glutes are your butt muscles. You're the big butt muscle and you have a few others, but it's the primary one. So the most popular or one of the most popular exercises for your glutes is, what do you think it is? Just curious.
I mean, doing the exercise on the back of a bench with a straight bar across your hip and rotating your hip. Is that what the glute is? Or is it hamstring curls?
Straight bar. Like a hip ab, like bringing your legs out.
Oh, they go like this and they sit on the bench and then they put the bar, not a dumbbell, but.
Oh, that's a hamstring curl.
No, they're laying on their back and they rotate their hips like their glutes. I don't know, but anyway, see, I'm not the expert. So I don't know clearly I don't know what the answer to your question is. So what is the
trick question? I think that squats are like one of the most popular, like,
I just have to say this. So if you're listening to the podcast, if you could have seen Shannon's face looking at me doing this, thinking, what in God is this guy even talking about? That's pretty much the look that we got there. So that's,
oh my gosh. No,
yes, squats. Okay. Let's go with squats.
You were perfect. I hear what much weirder shit on a day-to-day basis. So you were fine. Okay. So a squat, which is basically squatting down like you were going to sit in a chair and lifting back up. A lot of people will put a bunch of weight on their back, like a barbell, and to increase the load to their glutes. So it's so fascinating. I can break down, and other people who understand physics can break down these exercises and calculate how much force is going through the glute, or how much force the glute has to generate in order to lift you out of that exercise. So this is so fascinating. And I did this on my Instagram once, and I calculated the forces. So there's that exercise. Let's say you're holding 40 pounds. Let's say you're holding a 40-pound, either barbell or dumbbell or whatever, and you're doing squats. There is something like 2 or 3 times more force to your glutes when you choose a step up. Like, so you're like stepping up on a chair, like with one leg, so just with body weight than there is in a squat. So let me back up. we've got 2 exercises, a squat with 40 pounds and a step up with just your body weight. There is something like 2 times more work to your glute in a step up than there is in a squat. Why is this? It's because what's called the moment arm, or the magnification to your hip, is longer in a step up, and you're lifting more of your body weight in a step up versus in a squat. You have both of your legs working. So it divides the work by 2. Now, the problem with a squat is that because the magnification to the glute isn't that much, you have to hold a lot of weight. And when you're holding a lot of weight, you're getting that additional compression down through your spine. So if we can choose exercises that actually load the glute more and have 0 compression through the spine, like in a body weight step up, why would we not choose that exercise? Because in a step up, you can get more work through the glute and less stress through the spine. So I think that's just like an example of, and listen, anyone that loves squats, please don't come after me, because I'm not like saying that you should never do them.
I think it's fine, because my next question is, what you said, and you sparked something I'm going to ask you about the individual, how doing individual exercises actually increases the load with the same weight than doing them even single dumbbells together. But, and
yes.
that was one of the things that I had caught from some of your stuff. But,
yes.
on the squat, as it relates to loading the quad, is that true also for the quad and the hamstring?
Yes. So a squat, depending on how far your knee is traveling forward, so how far your knee is coming to approach going over your toes or over your toes. In most squats, the quad is challenged very little, because there's not a very long moment arm, meaning there's not very much magnification to the quads. I did the same thing, comparing a squat using 40-pound weights and what I call a matrix move. It's technically called a reverse Nordic curl. It's when you're on your kneeling and your hips and shoulders are straight and you're leaning back. And it almost looks like you're defying gravity. So that's why I call it the matrix move. But you're leaning back and then you're coming back up. So I compared a squat using heavy weights, like 40 pounds or whatever, and a reverse Nordic curl using body weight. The reverse Nordic curl, again, challenges the quads. I think, I cannot remember the numbers off the top of my head, but something like 3 times more. And you're just using your body weight. So again, 0 compression through the spine, more work through the quads. So that's how you can start to get better results with less joint wear and tear, is when you start to apply physics to exercise and start to take a harder look at these exercises that are popular. Like, are they really worth it? Just because they're popular and just because someone once said that they're really great, are they really doing what they think we're doing? And can we choose an exercise that is healthier on your body?
I think that's a great example. It's just hard for me.
Go to my Instagram and I broke it down. Maybe that will help conceptual. Again, it's kind of hard to describe without drawing it out. Like I do these stick figures.
Oh no, I get it. I'm more thinking to myself, how many years I've been doing it wrong. And so I'm going to ask this question, and I think we got to answer it for men and for women listening, because, well, you'll understand why. So what you just described in that reverse Nordic curl.
Yes.
Will that build muscle?
Yes.
And for a man, it would gain size?
Yes. For now, men and women, you would gain size. Yes.
So I was hesitating, because here's what all the women are going to say. And you know this, as soon as you said it, is my wife's going to come storming in here and be like, I don't want a big muscle. So can you talk about that? Because that really is one of the myths. Yes. And one of the reasons I think women don't use weights when they should be using weights to increase bone structure and strength.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up. And we should put this to bed here now. So first off, it is how easily you gain size is largely genetically predispositioned. So some people will be able to gain muscle faster and more easily than other people. It has a lot to do with your hormone balance and just how your body adapts. So for someone like me, it's very difficult for me to gain muscle. It's always been difficult for me to gain muscle. It happens very, very slowly and progressively. And I am just not predispositioned to get bulky. Like, it's just not going to be in the cards for me. Now, there are women that might be more predispositioned to that. Those women probably know that. They probably know that they are more predispositioned to gain size quickly. However, I totally think that we should stop being afraid of gaining muscle size, because the more muscle you have, the leaner your body will become. Muscle is one of the most calorically expensive tissues in our body. In other words, it requires a lot of energy from our metabolism in order to stay alive. So 1 pound of muscle burns like something like 50 to 100 calories per day just resting. So just to keep you alive, your muscle burns a lot of calories. So if you add like 5 pounds of muscle to your frame in a year, by the end of that year, you could be burning 500 more calories a day just sleeping, just on your couch, just driving in your car. So like at first, I think people get afraid because they start to see their muscles grow. Maybe they aren't adapting nutrition, but it really does create an environment where your metabolism increases. You have to rely less on like these intense, highly repetitive calorie burning workouts that can destroy your joints, and more on your body to keep you lean and healthy. So really that is the recipe for success. I went into it in nitty gritty detail in my podcast actually last week. So if anybody wants to like learn like more of the nitty gritty behind that, it's called Fit Body Happy Joints. You can go look at that. But I do think that women need to stop being afraid of gaining muscle, because it truly is the secret and really what our priority should be for both men and women.
And you can gain that muscle, 5 pounds of muscle, which could lead to losing 5 pounds of fat, which and I think the other, just because you do that, I know, I don't say I know. I think I know that women will say, well, I don't want to look like I'm ripped in the magazine. Trust me. Like you're not at 7% body fat. You're not going to look like that. You're going to look toner maybe, but you're not going to have veins and striations. That is like super hard. I mean, it's hard to get there naturally. Well, I should say it the other way. It's hard to even get there on drugs.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, truthfully, it's super hard.
Yes, it is not very, very, unless your genetics are just super freaky. It is very difficult. I mean, you have to be in the gym for 3 hours a day. You have to be eating a ton of the right stuff. It is very difficult. And trust me, I would love to be that way. And I am trying, like seriously, like I am lifting, I'm working out and I just do my program, but it is hard, like for most women to get that way. So I think that fear is a little bit antiquated, and I see that going away, and I hope it continues to start to go away. But thank you for bringing that up. I think that's super important for women to understand.
Yeah, I think there's been some messaging about this, but I think whatever other messaging that women read, whether that's through magazines, some websites, or whatever it is, it just counteracts it. So I want to talk a little bit about metabolism, which really you touched on as it relates to burning calories and your muscle, and this shift that I read from you, shifting your mindset from thinking that you're doing the exercise to burn calories, which if you're above heart rate zone 2, all you're burning is glucose at that point that you will refuel, or if you don't, you'll be dead the rest of the day. And exercising in these heart rate zones to build a body that burns calories longer.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that? Because I totally just paraphrased, I think, or not probably well, what I read in one of your posts, which I think is really important.
Yes. Well, I think that people choose exercises often because they feel hard and they are tiring systemically, which means like all over your body, you're just like fatigued afterwards. And I think that there is a big difference between just burning calories. It's similar to like getting stuck in mud and spinning and flooring it and spinning your wheels. And you are utilizing energy, you're utilizing fuel, you're going through your tank, but you're not going anywhere. So it's similar in that way. A lot of fitness modalities are like that. You're like burning calories, and in the moment you're burning calories, but it's a short-term payoff because you're not actually building your tissues to set you up for fitness results in the long term. So the way you really want to exercise in order to stimulate muscle growth, and let me say that muscle is not built in your workouts, it's built in your recovery. So you have to recover properly. But the way to really stimulate is to tap into what's called, again, I talk about this more on the podcast, but we'll get into it briefly. Stimulate what's called your glycogen stores in your muscles. And your glycogen stores are so when you eat food, the carbohydrates in your food are converted to glucose, like you said, and you might use that glucose to go throughout the motions of your day. Whatever is left is then sent to the liver and to the muscles to be glycogen. And the liver uses this glycogen to power your heart, power your digestive system, power your respiratory system, other systems in your body. The glycogen in your muscles is used, almost stored as an emergency source for when your muscles need to contract very hard. So when you lift a heavy thing, those glycogen stores are tapped in order to fuel that muscular contraction. So what happens is when you never tap into those glycogen stores and you're never intensely working your muscles, the glycogen stores tend to build up because you eat, the same process happens, more glycogen goes into the muscle, that glycogen overflows and then is converted into fat. So if you are not intensely contracting your muscles, you're never emptying those glycogen stores, and that glycogen is just building up and converting into fat. So the way, again, you start to empty those glycogen stores is to exercise and recruit your muscles in a intense way. And I think people think intensity has to mean like plyometrics and box jumps and sprints and all of that kind of thing. And intensity can just be like a really focused, heavy chest press and just really tapping into those muscles. Intensity can be a reverse Nordic curl going really slow. I mean, you are gassed by the end of that. But I think like a lot of women, I'll speak to women specifically, like to do like Pilates and more bar, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but they might not be tapping into those glycogen stores and emptying those glycogen stores, which truthfully will set your metabolism up for a long term. You will improve your metabolism over the long term by more strong muscular contractions. Did I lose you?
No.
Okay, good.
Because I think that flows into your hair dryer test, right?
Yeah, did you see that today?
I did. Yeah,
Yes.
what is the hair? I actually needed to read it twice. Maybe I got off caffeine completely. And
wow.
Yeah, I decided
How you doing?
I'm doing 500% better than I was. Honestly.
You mean while you were drinking the caffeine, you're
well,
500%
like,
better
so
now?
yeah. So here's how I would describe it. I will tell you that I've had to adjust, and I'm probably, I don't want to use the word crazy, meticulous as you are about fitness and all that, mainly because I do lift, but I ride my bike 150, 200 miles a week. So if you're going to do that, you got to have you got to have your shit together. Like,
yes, totally.
You got to be. So what I've noticed though on my so I'm watching, feeling everything, like what I look like in the morning, how much water am I retaining, all that stuff. I have noticed that the caffeine was definitely burning fat for me without having to do things, because, you're in fight or flight for, as soon as you start taking that caffeine, you're jacked up.
Yes.
I am much more level during the day. My head is way clearer, meaning I don't need to ride 3.5 hours to get the clear head. I've got a clear head when I wake up. I can concentrate on my poor Gia, operations manager for Build a Business, but like I can crank out work like nobody's like I can concentrate much more. Getting off of it took me 5 weeks. I think I was doing 5 cups of tea, which is whatever, probably 50 milligrams of, and I went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 1 week.
Wow.
And it was hell, and it was, and then that week afterwards, I think my wife would tell you, Yvette would tell you I was probably a little edgy, even Gia who talks to me. But I feel way better. And I've saved time. I don't have to make the tea. I don't have to go to McDonald's to get these iced teas. I'm not taking stevia, which is, I know, natural. I still think it was affecting me in some way that, I mean, Shannon,
Yes.
I'm like ordering that stuff from Amazon. Like it's going out of
Yes.
style, right? So,
Well, I think like, and again, I don't know, like, don't like fact check me or do fact me, but like I think
nobody's
like
fact checking you, Shannon. You gotta, I think
Okay,
social
good.
media has made you so sensitive because you probably get all these DMs,
So sensitive.
negative
Oh my
comments
gosh.
about some BS that your hair wasn't right or that your outfit didn't work or that you don't know what you're talking about. I will just tell you from a guy who's been in social media since 1996 that you got to put
Oh
that
my
out,
God.
put that out of
Oh
your
my
head.
gosh.
But anyway.
That is true. And it takes some getting used to, because I definitely have had a few haters that have, like, it bothers me. But yeah, about the stevia, like, I just have a feeling that stevia hits your brain in the same way sugar does, in the sense that it's a very refined substance and it, goes straight to your brain just the way, sugar does. It's almost like that instant dopamine hit. So I do wonder if, like, that's why I've never really understood stevia. So anybody that's listening to this and does understand it, send me a message and explain, because I would love to know.
Well, no. So what you've said, I actually did study it, and I know that it's going to sound really geeky, but I do read academic journals on the weekends. I have a psychology degree.
Same. I do too.
So I did study it, and it does trigger. That's why people who drink Diet Coke, beyond the fact that it's got like formaldehyde and 60 other things, of which I'm not throwing stones, because a long time ago I used to drink Diet Coke and I used to drink Diet Mountain Dew, which will jack you up like nobody's business.
Yes.
But it also rot your teeth. It will probably eat your insides out. Luckily,
it's like meth. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah, it is like meth. But I mean, it works. But it triggers, your brain doesn't know the difference, in the sense your cells understand the difference, but your gut and your brain don't. So effectively, that's why people are drinking Diet Coke are overweight. And
yes.
And there's just nothing you can do. So when I did get off of caffeine, I went and got, recently, I have 4 weeks till my next one. I got a DEX scan. I got VO2 max, metabolism analysis. And they do this thing, maybe you've done it before, where they actually draw your body and it just make you sick. like
really?
The outline. I do not, the lady prepared me. She's like, look, I know you're crazy fitness dude, and even bodybuilders who come in here hate this, but it gives you the true measurements of your arms, your legs, your stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I think COVID, I think I'm bulletproof, Shannon, but COVID, the scale tells the truth. Like,
yeah,
I was at 22% body fat, which has scared the living daylights out of some of my friends because they think I'm lean.
Yes. Isn't that crazy?